Well, thank you so much, Paula. Thank you. And thank you so much, everyone, for being here and for participating in this two-day workshop. Antonio gave an overview this morning, and many of you actually participated in writing components of the scoping study report. Some of you provided reviews during the community review periods. If you haven't, you're going to have an opportunity to participate, learn more about Articolors, provide your feedback today and tomorrow, and participate in refining the Articolor science. So, what is Articolors? Articolors is a proposed, thank you. Articolors is a proposed NASA field campaign program, still a proposal, that aims to improve understanding and prediction of land-ocean interactions in the rapidly changing Arctic coastal zone, and use remote sensing observations, field measurements, experiments, models to assess vulnerability, responses, and feedbacks of coastal ecosystems, communities, and natural resources to current and future pressures. So since the beginning, we've been very excited about Articolors because it's kind of unique in its attempt to study maybe for the first time the coastal Arctic as this integrated land, ocean, atmosphere, biosphere system. In this schematic here, you see some of the different components. On one end member, the terrestrial component, permafrost dynamics, coastal erosion, the river, the delta, landfast ice. On the other end member, the open ocean. And in between, the coastal ocean, the interface, the land-ocean interface, where we have also hydrologic processes, sea ice, the land-ocean troposphere feedbacks, the benthic community dynamics, and human activities. So the original overarching science goal, and I'm saying original because this is going to change the next couple of days, most likely, was to determine the present and future impacts of these terrigenous atmospheric and oceanic fluxes on the ecology, biogeochemistry, and ecosystem services of the Arctic coastal zone in the context of chains, environmental, short-term, and climate, long-term chains. The revised overarching science goal we've been thinking about is to make it a little bit more focused and say that we'd like to quantify the biogeochemical response of the Arctic nearshore ecosystem to rapidly changing terrestrial fluxes and ice conditions. To address this kind of ambitious overarching science goal, of course, you need to have an integrative observational approach. So as Antonio mentioned this morning, maybe this is not your traditional oceanographic field campaign where you would have just a few major cruises. Here, we would like to address interannual variability, have measurements different years. Definitely address seasonality, have measurements in different seasons. We would like to have measurements from different platforms, airborne platforms, satellite-based remote sensing, helicopter-enabled sampling, observations from research vessels, smaller boats, larger boats, icebreakers, moorings, floats, buoys, gliders, autonomous vehicles. So it's a combination of all of these approaches, observational methods, combined with models that will help us address the science goals in Articolors. So what has been the scoping study timeline so far? We started in 2014. We had our kickoff meeting in January, and we immediately proceeded with 2 community workshops in June and November. And during these community workshops, we worked very closely with our collaborators, the community, to define the science objectives of Articolors, revise our initial proposal, and based on this feedback, we wrote the first scoping study report. And we posted this for comments in August of 2015. After getting more comments from the community. We included these comments in a revised scoping study report, and we submitted this final report to NASA in September. NASA posted for 30 days comments, and they had a review panel in November of 2015. The review panel reviewed the scoping study report. They made specific recommendations for revisions, and we got these recommendations in February 2016. Since then, we've been thinking about what's the best way to approach these comments, and we're having the open community workshop now with a goal of having a revised report by the end of the year. So the objective of the workshop today, as Paula mentioned, is to discuss with you and get feedback from the community on how to address the review panel comments and how to focus the science in Articology, refine the science and implementation plan. And of course, for you to help us address the review panel comments recommendations, you need to know what these comments are. So this is what I'm going to be doing for the next few minutes. The panel concluded that Arctic colors is a potential high merit, but needs further study planning to resolve science and other issues. And they specifically said that an Arctic coastal experiment represents an important and timely opportunity for NASA because of the rapidly changing Arctic environment. Now, going to specific panel recommendations, I grouped them in recommendations that were more specific to the science objectives of Arctic colors and recommendations that relate more to the implementation plan. So these were the recommendations on the science objectives. Overall, the panel suggested that we have more specificity in overarching aim and science questions. We should present specific hypotheses and link these hypotheses to specific knowledge gaps, and then these knowledge gaps need to be linked to specific proposed measurements. Recommendation 2 was about the role of the atmosphere in this field campaign program, because actually the panel thought that maybe we can eliminate the role of the atmosphere from our science objectives, or if we really need to highlight the atmospheric component, we need to be very explicit on what are the linkages between the atmosphere, the land, and the ocean. The third recommendation was regarding a question whether in this field campaign program we are addressing mostly ecological processes or biogeochemical processes. And if we're addressing both ecological and biogeochemical processes, what are the most important measurements that need to be done in order to address these questions? And the fourth recommendation on the science was about predictions. We're saying that we're going to look at chains. Which of the measurements are going to help us look at climate change signals that might be detectable, and which of the observations, which of the measurements we would use to establish a current baseline for the coastal Arctic. Of course, we're also going to be using the proposed observations to develop improved parameterizations for new components for models, and also for building new remote sensing algorithms. And both the remote sensing and the models will help us scale up, both temporally and spatially. So these were the main comments on the science. Regarding implementation, one of the recommendations was, let's rethink the study domain. The initial study domain for Arctic colors was extending all the way from the Yukon Delta to the Mackenzie Delta, covering this whole coastal area. And the panel felt that we may be stretching a little bit too thin. We may be including too large of a domain, especially if we want to have measurements at some of the same sites in different years, in different seasons to address interannual seasonal variability. So, do we need to change the study domain? Do we need to revise this? This is something that we're going to be discussing tomorrow. The second recommendation was about the extensive field campaigns and the intensive field campaigns that we proposed, the synoptic and the intensive, the year-round measurements, and those campaigns that will focus on understanding processes. How could we link the two better so that we can address the revised science goals? Another recommendation here was about the dependencies and complementarities with other programs, for example, above, or how we could coordinate with USGS. Be very specific on relevant operational timelines with above, for example, and with USGS highlight how our collaboration with USGS would allow us to extend some of these observations beyond the duration of Arctic colors. And relevant to these collaborations, how can these synergies, these relationships with other programs in the area are going to help us mitigate specific risks? For example, if there is cloudiness and we cannot get frequent remote sensing observations, or fires and fogs, how this would affect the operational timeline or the airborne field campaigns. And the final recommendation was solicit input from the community on the overarching science aim and science questions. Hence, the workshop today and tomorrow to get your feedback on how to refine the Arctic color science. So we're going to be discussing the science questions, the science objectives today, for the rest of the day today, and tomorrow morning. And then we're going to discuss the study domain tomorrow and the field measurements program. And in the afternoon, we're going to discuss the implementation plan and Arctic colors within the context of other programs, other initiatives in the area, both US as well as international activities. This is the revised hypothesis that we came up with. It's not too late to establish a baseline for characterizing biological and biogeochemical conditions in the nearshore Arctic. And the 3 new top-level science questions, and we're going to be discussing this, as I said, today. Now, I mentioned the collaboration, the linkages with other programs in the area. One of those is Sentinel-Nord. So for the next few minutes, we're going to hear from Maria Tzortziou, Eric Ram, and Chusi Bachuaka on Sentinel-Nord.